Hey, I'm Connie,
And I'm Noelle.
and we are product managers on the Data Factory team. We're thrilled to be back for our sixth episode for our podcast series, the Data Integration Station. Whether you're a seasoned Data Factory enthusiast or a newcomer to Microsoft Fabric eager to explore fresh content, we promise to teach you something new every month.
This month on the Data Integration Station, we have two new guests here to talk about transitioning to Fabric. We're going to welcome our first guest, Cathrine, who's here to talk to us about how Fabric can be used for ADF customers. And later on, we'll welcome Swetha, who will walk us through how to get started in Fabric with our free click-by-click demo experience. We're so excited to share our next guest on our podcast, which is Cathrine. Cathrine, thank you so much for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind, could you kind of share a little bit more of your background and what it is that you do, and what kind of topic you would be talking about with us today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Cathrine from Norway. I've been working with Microsoft Technology as an ETL developer, data engineer for almost 16 years now. Getting old. But I've been doing everything from SSIS to ADF, Synapse, and now Fabric, mostly focusing on pipelines, data integration, data transformation. And I've also been a Microsoft Data Platform MVP since 2015. So I
Wow.
love speaking, blogging, sharing my knowledge, and basically just helping the community.
Awesome. Well, we're so glad that you're here with us today to share more of this knowledge to all of our users. So I guess today we're going to focus a little bit more on Fabric for people who are used to using ADF or maybe even Synapse. So let's kind of focus on that. So I guess the first question is more just like around like, what do you see are the main differences for you as you're using Fabric and from like what you've seen before in ADF and like what is it about Fabric that you might like better or might be more useful for like your work and the people that you work with?
Yeah, those are great questions. I would say coming from the ADF world, you're going to see that everything in Fabric is very familiar. It's basically the same interface. I mean, you can even mount your ADF into Fabric if you want to.
Mhm.
So it's just the same. It's just more tightly integrated with everything else that you get in Fabric. And it goes both ways. So if you are already using ADF and you now want to delve into Fabric, you can also use your current ADF to write data into your lakehouse, for example. So they're very, yeah, they work very well together. You're not going to have any difficulties kind of to understand what to use and when to use it. But I would say the biggest difference or differences are that in Fabric, you now have data flows without the space compared to the old mapping data flows that we have in Azure Data Factory with the space. Very important to distinguish between
True.
the space and non-space. And at first, for me, coming from ADF, I think it was a little surprising, but it also makes sense when you look at kind of who Fabric is mainly built for. So Fabric being a SaaS application, I would say it's more tailored to those who are less of IT professionals or have that IT background and more towards business users and giving them a tool set without having to think about infrastructure and all the other things that you would do in ADF. And
Mhm.
it just makes sense, at least to me, to use that Power Query interface, to use the uh, what most people were familiar with from Power BI, and
Mhm.
just kind of continue using that. And I love that it's now being scaled out to, you can actually use it for both data ingestion and transformation. So I think that is probably the biggest difference that you will notice. And one more thing that I want to call out, you can now send notifications to Teams and Outlook
Yeah.
directly from the pipelines. You don't
True.
have to go and create logic apps. So I love that. There are, some minor improvements that are really quality of life improvements, I would say.
Mhm.
And then we can probably talk a little bit more about this as well. But I also want to point out that ADF is still very relevant and very useful as a standalone service, the way it was intended to be. So
Mhm.
that's something that I think most people should consider and think about is whether they want to go all in on Fabric and use that with all the tools, or maybe use it for the way that I see it. Some people use it for the data ingestion part and then the Power BI part, but maybe they're using Databricks as that kind of middle data warehouse layer. But if you are using more like best of breeds, or you have ADF solutions already, you can still continue kind of using that. You don't have to migrate into Fabric unless it makes sense to you.
So I guess kind of along the lines of that thinking, like what are some considerations that people should be kind of walking through to decide whether or not they should use ADF as a standalone product, or if they should consider like coming into Fabric, or like at least for you, like kind of what questions would be best to answer to kind of come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I think the main thing is looking at, do you want to kind of use all of Fabric? You can pick and choose which services to use. You can use it just for the pipelines and data transformation if you want to. But I would say you get the most value if you use it for everything. If you use it for your lakehouse, your warehouse, your Power BI, and all of your data ingestion and transformation. But if you have a very, I would say, more of an IT managed, IT created solution that is on a global scale. You need kind of those multi, like the global. You need to have things in different areas around the world for, disaster recovery and high availability. If you need to have multiple data factories sharing the same kind of infrastructure, and you have a team that can manage that, and you want that kind of large scale, I would say go for ADF as a standalone service. And I think that is kind of the core difference for me is, do you want to buy this SaaS, software as a service application that Fabric is? Or do you want to pick and choose the services, manage infrastructure, manage the deployments on a global scale, in which case Azure Data Factory is still the way to go. So it's kind of like, are you coming from the IT perspective, Data Factory in Azure? If you're coming from the business perspective, go for Fabric, which gives you everything you need without having to tinker with all of those settings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Super cool. Well, I guess we know that Fabric is a newer product. It's still evolving. Based on what you've seen so far, where do you see the most meaningful improvements for ADF users, especially in terms of usability, performance, and the quality of life, I guess, that you had mentioned before?
Yeah, so definitely the integrated activities that we get now in the pipeline. And I would say just having everything in one interface. It's very helpful not having to switch back and forth, that you can do everything. Also, when it comes to you not just working as one person, but working in a team, like it's very easy for me to see what others are working on. We can, share access to different workspaces and so on. So I think just the concept of Fabric works really well in many places. And also, like I mentioned, data flows and the Power Query data flows without the space. I would also say is a massive improvement for those who don't have that technical background. Bringing that Power Query editor into Fabric, and also improving it in so many ways, with the ingestion part and not just the transformation part, the different fast copies that you can use to actually use it for large scale ingestion, and just having that available. I think even for me, with my background of working with SSI as an ADF and Synapse before going into Fabric, it is a tool that allows you to focus on the kind of the quality of data, the output, the shape of the data that you want, because you can immediately see that, yes, this is what I want. I want to split this column into two. I want to combine these columns or merge it or pivot it, without having to write any code, or even any kind of expressions that we were used to previously. I would say that is one of like the really cool things that I love about Fabric. And then there's also, some of the more recent things, having variable libraries now that you can use to actually change the parameters of things across your different workspaces and environments. I know there has been a little bit of debate in the community that we wish it would have been there from the start, because there were some things that we were, kind of used to using in ADF that we wanted to be in Fabric from the start. But again, going in with the mindset that this was more like business users and citizen developers, they probably didn't really think about environments and variables and parameterization the same way that the IT pros like me did. But just having that now and seeing that there is more work being done to kind of enable Fabric Data Factory as well to be used, I would say, in a more IT managed way, is also very, very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I guess question for you, now that you have been working with both ADF and Fabric, for ADF users who are maybe looking to get into Fabric, like what are maybe some like tips or tricks or things to note for this migration, or like kind of working in this new environment that you can kind of point out, or to have people pay a little bit more attention to kind of ease them into it a little bit better?
Yeah, I would say there are kind of multiple approaches to that. And I think it's very important that you start by assessing the different options that you have before you immediately start like rebuilding things into Fabric. Because you have those options. You can mount your entire data factory and just have everything available inside your Fabric UI. That is kind of like a first step of getting used to like everything being in one UI. Because you can still use the old ADF to write to your new lakehouses, your new warehouses, without having to really kind of spend all that time rebuilding things without it providing additional value for you. You can have that combination where you have your existing solutions still running in ADF, but you start using Fabric for the new kind of tools. Maybe you see that you can use it for new projects, or integrating a new source into your solution. So you can also do that and have both work together. And I would say the main thing is like, do you want to spend the time migrating, or do you want to spend your time adding value? I think that is the most important thing, because just migrating to migrate might not be the best option. Of course, if you see that you can save money, for example, by moving from ADF into Fabric and having everything in that one interface, very good example of, providing value. But if you end up spending, 50 hours just rebuilding something and then everything works the way it is, maybe not kind of the best option. But another approach is just looking at the orchestration side, not so much the copying of data or transformation of data, but orchestration, where, like I've mentioned a couple of times now, Fabric has more tools available for you, especially in terms of alerting when everything is integrated with Outlook and Teams. Maybe that could be a good place to start. Just orchestrate the things that you have. And then you can, send those notifications. You might go ahead and start by removing your old Logic Apps solutions, or maybe even changing from a reactive monitoring of failed pipelines to more proactive, where you can set up those notifications to kind of easier visibility for your team. That could be a place. But I think that's kind of like the one thing that I keep repeating is do what adds value, and find those pieces that are new, that you can use to improve something, reduce cost, improve performance. It could be using data flows with one of the connectors that makes it just easier for you to work with than maybe you were doing in the past. So find those little bits and pieces, and then also just kind of evaluate whether you want to take that step and migrate everything into Fabric, or whether it makes sense to you just to let it live for now, and then kind of focus on all the new cool things inside of Fabric.
Super cool. So let's say I'm like an ADF user now and I've committed to moving to Fabric. What does that initial experience kind of look like? And can you talk a bit more about how the mounting experience works into this?
Yeah, so I would say it's a little bit different working inside of Fabric. The interface is very familiar. You might have to click in a few different places than you have to do right now. But the interface itself, creating those pipelines is very similar. So the one thing that you need to kind of change in the way you're working is that you're now working from a workspace perspective inside of Fabric instead of working with separate data factories. So
Mhm.
instead of creating multiple data factories from Azure and then kind of switching between the different factories, you can now create those items directly in one or more workspaces. So if you have been working with Power BI in addition to Azure Data Factory, then this is going to be familiar. But if you haven't, you just kind of have to switch your head around a little bit to think about workspaces as maybe I can compare it to your resource group, kind of. So inside of your workspace, you create the set of pipelines, the data flows, and copy jobs, which I haven't even mentioned at all. I should have mentioned that, realized just now. But yeah, that's where you can create the different data factory items. And then you kind of have to figure out, okay, did you have one data factory per kind of source or maybe data product, if that's your way of thinking? Then you might
Mhm.
translate that into separate workspaces for that. Or it could be per environment. So you have one workspace for dev, test, and prod. Or you might have a bunch of like different workspaces with dev, test, and prod for your different data products. So it's just a little different way of organizing and kind of switching between your items.
Mhm.
But otherwise, it should be, I would say it's fairly familiar once you start looking at the pipelines themselves.
Yeah. Oh, super cool.
Yeah.
Last question before we let you go for today. But if you had a magic wand and you could add something new to Fabric now, that you maybe found that you had an EDF or maybe just something completely new, what would it like? What is it that you would want to see there for you?
I love this question.
Yeah.
I've provided this answer to multiple people already, and we're still not quite there. I
Okay.
would love to be able to kind of point to a JSON file that could be nested multiple levels deep and just go like, turn this into a flat table for me without
Ooh.
me having to think about anything. That is
Ooh.
like,
Okay.
that's my number one wish because I work with so many JSON sources and
Yeah.
there's always some kind of like you have to dig into the different hierarchies. They could be ragged, they could have multiple levels, and then you might have something down in a hierarchy that is missing from another adjacent object. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't just flatten it out and give me all the columns so I can work with this from like that table and SQL perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can
You.
fix that, if you can like make Data Factory that magic wand, just point it to JSON files, and here you go. Here's a table that you can like write to your lakehouse or warehouse. I would love you forever, even more than I
Yeah.
do.
You see this more like as a data flow added feature or like something that we could do in pipelines? Like, is there a preference or do you just want it to happen?
No, as long as it works, I don't care. Just, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the good thing about Fabric. You can pick and choose whatever you want. That kind of works for the thing. You're not kind of forced into this framework and trying to make it work. Just
Yeah.
use whatever you want. So maybe it could be data flow, or it could be like a JSON pipeline activity. Just like flatten JSON, have that there pointed to a file, and then magically you have a table. That would be really
Yeah.
awesome.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you again for coming in and talking to us today. I think there is a lot to be learned and a lot to see. And of course, like we'll include all the links and maybe some of your blogs in the description of this video so people can take a look and maybe see some of this in action. But thank you again for joining us, and we're so happy and appreciative that you're here. And we will hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much. I mean, I can talk for hours on this, so whenever you want.
Many thanks to Cathrine for providing valuable insights on making a smooth transition to Fabric, as well as offering thoughtful tips and considerations.
Now we're excited to welcome another fantastic guest, Swetha. She's here to introduce to us how to kick things off as a new user interested in Fabric.
Today, we're super excited to be joined by a powerhouse in product marketing, Swetha. Swetha is currently a senior product marketing manager for Microsoft Fabric, and we're really excited that you're here to join our podcast today. If you want to give yourself an introduction and give us a background on how you kind of landed here today.
Thank you so much, Connie and Noelle, for the opportunity. I'm really excited to talk about all things Data Factory on this podcast episode. Again, introduction about myself. I'm Swetha Manepalli. I'm a senior product marketing manager, but I have really deep connections with Data Factory because that's the background I came from. That was my first footing into Microsoft data services. I used Azure Data Factory as a customer, developed pipelines, did tons of projects. I loved the tool at the time, and that's what gave me path forward to be part of this amazing company, Microsoft, and be part of this innovative product called Microsoft Fabric. With that, every time we really think about the data space, it evolved so much. I started my career as a database developer. From database developer, moved into both different hats in the data space as a ETL developer. Worked on majority of the ETL tools like Informatica, Oracle Warehouse Builder. At the time, I don't think it's there right now. It's Oracle Data Integrator, Pentaho. So it's an open source tool. So did a lot of POCs. Really got experience in the ETL space, but also have seen the shifts in the ETL space over the past decade or so. Several years back, we wanted to venture out and start using Microsoft Azure Data Services, and that's where I learned about Azure Data Factory. And a fun fact here is when I interviewed for that role as a data architect, I have no idea about Azure Data Factory. The hiring manager at the time, he asked me, "Hey, do you have experience with Azure Data Factory?" I'm like, what? There's an ETL tool called Azure Data Factory. I've never heard about it, but I assured him that, hey, if it's an ETL tool, probably it's doing the same things that majority of the ETL tools are made. It's probably low code, no code, drag and drop. Like our CTO at Microsoft says, clickety, draggety, drop. I thought, I would be able to adapt to the new tool, but I wasn't sure if he's going to give me the opportunity, and I'm glad he did, because that's, again, what really brought me to where I am today. So after I landed that role is when I started working on Azure Data Factory at the time. It was a really cool tool where it was pretty easy, like for somebody like me who does have the background but have no idea about the tool. It was easy for me to get started with. The navigation of the tool itself was really easy, though you really need to have expertise from a tool perspective, but getting started was not a blocker at all. By all means, anybody, again, tuning into this podcast, if you have not worked with any of the data products from Microsoft, they make it really easy from a customer experience perspective. So if you haven't done already, get started. Nothing will stop you because it's very seamless, and the experience has only gotten better over the years. And now here today we are in Fabric Data Factory, again, another amazing tool where it really makes the customer journey seamless. Because when you really think about a data project or a data lifecycle, the first step forward is, how do I bring data? There are different data sources that I work with. How do I bring the data? And that's exactly where the front door entry for any data project is Data Factory. I think I've shown a lot of love for Data Factory.
We love it.
Perfect. Yeah, Connie, that's where I am. That's where I came from. But today, I'm really excited to be doing what I'm doing as a product marketing manager, focused on Data Factory within Microsoft Fabric, is really to bring that storytelling both from a technical lens as well as a business lens, really showcasing all the cool features that product managers like you guys are really shaping the product well for for the era of AI, so to speak.
Yeah, that's super inspiring to hear your background and kind of how you landed here at Microsoft today. It sounds super exciting. Are there any tips and tricks that you can give to the customers who maybe have never looked at Fabric Data Factory before and how they can get onto that onboarding process? Maybe they don't even have a Fabric account and they kind of just want to test it out, but don't really want to commit to anything. Any tips and tricks for that?
Absolutely. So what really makes Fabric a differentiator in terms of really making it easy for any customers to get started with is the 60-day trial period for Fabric, where you really don't have to put in any credit card or nothing of that sort. You can basically get started. Let's assume majority of the companies around the world or probably will have some footprint of Power BI. If you already have Power BI, you know, Fabric is one click away. There's nothing that you have to do. It comes as part of what you're paying for Power BI. It's basically the same platform. So one click away, just start your free trial within the app.powerbi.com portal, and you'll land in using Fabric, and every workload within Fabric is available for you at your fingertips for 60 days at no cost. And technically, it's $17,000 because you get an F64 capacity right off the bat. So you can basically do production type workloads as a POC to see, how it works for your data needs. I'm pretty sure with all the work, things that we put in place, every persona can, get started with using Microsoft Fabric. You could be a data engineer, a data scientist, basically a data analyst or a data steward. There is a purpose built for pretty much every persona in the data space.
That's super awesome to hear.
Yeah, super cool. I would love to hear more about the work that we did together on a click by click. So I guess to get some context on this, Swetha and I have been working together on a really exciting click by click experience inside of Fabric. Pretty much you get to walk through the UI of Fabric Data Factory without having to sign up for anything. And you can access the link as is. We'll make sure it's in the description so you'll have access to that. But I'd love to hear your thought process on this work and walking through it.
Perfect. No, that's a great segue, Connie, because what really attests to what we're talking today is to bring that to life in terms of demos or showcasing the product itself. So what this click by click demo, again, thanks to Connie's leadership in bringing that to bear. So in FabCon US 2025 in Vegas is where we introduced the click by click demo for Data Factory within Fabric. Let me quickly share my screen and we can get into the product experience itself.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. So when you think about Data Factory, there are three facets to a Data Factory experience. First is you get started with the Data Factory by bringing in the data, and we have 180 plus connectors within the Data Factory experience in Fabric, and the list keeps growing because our product teams like yourself are really hard at work in adding more and more connectors based on the feedback that we hear from our customers on any things that are missing. So basically you can get data from apps, databases, file systems, applications. So it's basically 180 plus connectors, like I said, which gives you a plethora of options to get started with. Once the data lands into Fabric, it could be either one lake or any other destination of your choice. The second step is how do you orchestrate the data movement? So the second step is how do we create pipelines? So you bring data from point A, drop into point B, but that's not all about Data Factory. There's a lot more that you can do. And the power of Data Factory really lies in how you are enriching that data experience by, data pipelines. You can basically start using task flow to guide you through that medallion architecture process. For example, if your company wants to start your data journey and medallion architecture like your bronze, silver, gold layer, so all that orchestration and data movement also happens within Data Factory as an option. The third step is really enriching that data from a transformation perspective. Let's take, for example, you're working for a company, take Contoso Outdoors, our favorite example all time. So let's say you wanted to know from a CDO perspective or from a data steward perspective, what are the revenue that we did for the past 5 years? What are the trend analysis? But if you really think about it, it's not always straightforward. When you bring data, land it to somewhere, there are transformations, business rules that you need to add to the data to make it really rich and readily usable by your business users. So that's where the third step that you see here comes into play, where you're transforming the data, preparing it. Again, the underlying architecture is using Power Query, which makes it really powerful for taking all the transformation logic and embed into the Data Factory experience using Dataflow Gen 2 as your low code, no code transformation experience, or you can actually use notebooks or attach the existing notebooks into the pipeline. So you can do a lot of things within the Data Factory. It's not just bringing data from point A, dropping into point B, but in the interim, you can really get enriched data experience, which is the Fabric Data Factory at your hands. With that, let's get, for today's demo, I will focus on getting started with Data Factory. So with this click by click demo, what we do is let's get started. So again, this is not even using the Fabric trial experience. Like I said, Noelle, in a few minutes back, I did talk about how do you get started with click by click demo like this. You don't even have to click through any of the trail experience. If you just want to get a taste of what Data Factory looks like in Fabric, this could be one option. But if you really want to get to hands-on experience, definitely Fabric Trail is our favorite option to go to. Now, once I click that, I'm in the Fabric Data Factory experience, like you see. So this is Fabric workspace. Now I'm in the Fabric Data Factory experience. Let's click next. And what it does is within Fabric, there's a concept called task flows. So it's like whiteboarding, but on the not on the actual whiteboard, but it's on the canvas within the product. Again, super cool. I remember days when we were doing data architectures, you would run to the whiteboard, you have a ton of people, architects, business users, you'll start drawing these boxes on the whiteboard, and then it converts into the actual ETL process. But here, to get started, you can actually use task flows within the product experience itself. So here, for today's experience, demo, we'll click on medallion, where it gives you that bronze, silver, and gold layer architecture. And that's how it looks. So once I click, you have your bronze, where you bring all your raw data, drop it in there, your silver and gold data layers as you progress through your data cleansing process. Now, once I click next, so let's say you're bringing data from your lakehouse. So you can get the data from your lakehouse, give it a name. Once you give it a name, click next, it will start creating the lakehouse within Fabric. And once the data lands, you basically completed the step one of bringing data and landing it into your bronze data layer. The next step is creating a data pipeline. So where you are really ingesting data, not just pieces of data, but really at scale, and creating that data workflow. So let's give it a name. Once you have the name for the data pipeline, click next. And here, this is where you really get to the power of Data Factory. So you can use Copy Data Assistant, where you can connect to, like I said, one of the 180 plus connectors in order to bring the data. Once, let's say you want to bring data from, existing Parquet format. So you connect the data and then land the data into the lakehouse that you created. Let's go. So what we currently did is we not only created a lakehouse, but also landed the data from lakehouse into our one lake, the tables and files that you want to bring in. Again, it's super seamless. You can give the names of the files as a destination. And look how easy it is. You can merge different files. You can flatten the hierarchy, because oftentimes if you're working with hierarchical data sets, so it really comes out of the box. Once we go through that, you can pick the file format, the compression type. Again, like you see, it is super easy to get to this experience within Data Factory. Once I do that, what I basically did is I got a data set from public holidays as the source, and I landed the data into a destination in the form of a CSV file, and with what? Few clicks of button. So once you have that, you created yourself an activity within the Data Factory pipeline experience, and you can add the destination. Once you do that, you run, and it gives you that, as you run these different sources and data pipelines, it gives you where you are in the process, whether it is in progress or succeeded. It gives you all the run stats and metrics. Basically, you can see how long the job took, all the different metrics that you can monitor. And it's as easy as click of a button. So the data landed from your source to the destination in Lakehouse as a CSV format. Now you can go through that, and yeah, coming back, what we did is we created a copy data activity. We brought data from our source and dropped into our destination within one lake. And you can add dynamic content wherein you don't necessarily have to create hard-coded source connections or data connections. You can basically use this dynamic option in order to do things in real time. Again, this is really cool when you move from your dev to test and prod environments. This really comes in handy where you don't want to really hard code anything within your workspace. Now with that, you run, save, and save all the options. Again, if you have already used Azure Data Factory as a standalone tool, this could be a very, very similar experience. Again, keeping our customer experience in mind, we don't necessarily change a whole lot from a UI perspective. It's the same experience that carries forward. If you're already hooked on to Azure Data Factory, it's exactly the same experience. So like you see, we can easily bring data from point A to point B using Data Factory. Now let me go back to the home page. So here we are completed with the section 1, but section 2, section 3, like I explained, once you have the data landed into one lake, what do you do with that data? How do you enrich that data? Going through the medallion architecture stages is really where the meat of the project is.
Yeah, thanks for this demo, Swetha. This is super in-depth and a great walkthrough of what the click-by-click and how it works. Noelle, did you have any other questions or any other ideas?
Well, this was actually the first time I'm seeing this lab because I wasn't at FabCon US. I wasn't that lucky. So this is super awesome to see, and like thank you both for working so hard to getting it together. Because I feel like it definitely really shows like how to get started and how to start play or like kind of be able to see what Data Factory looks like in Fabric without really having to figure out all the trial information, all that. I'm sure that people are busy and you just kind of want to see if it's even worth like starting. And this is a really great way to kind of see how you do all the different steps. And like I think all the like pointers are super helpful too, because it kind of like explains it to you without you having to like find videos or read through the docs. And this is super awesome to see. The only question I had for Shweta, which is not like super related. I mean, it is a little bit related, but not quite. Is that it's super awesome to hear that you had this really deep developer background and now you're kind of taking it to a higher level and like really like taking all that you learned and all these new skills that you have. Like as you see Fabric developing and all these new features being added in, like what gets you excited about Fabric? Like what do you see is like something that you're like, oh, like I really wish I had this when I was developing, or like, oh, this would have been so helpful for me like back then, you know?
I have an answer right for you, Noelle.
Yeah.
Copilot. So
Great
I
answer.
remember there were days when I was developing all this, especially on the Power BI side. I'm not a Power BI developer. I was a core ETL developer, but I was assigned a task to go create this really cool looking dashboards. I struggled. I struggled with the DAX queries. I struggled with a lot of this filtering. How do you do that? But today, when I see Copilot doing all the magic for you, I probably could have spent my weekends, my personal time, night outs just to get this thing to work, because not because of the tool itself, but because of my lack of experience. I really wish Copilot could have been my best friend when I was developing stuff. Now I can see how it really infuses that, enhances that developer experience where rather than spending your time trying to fix a query, you can really use Copilot to get you over that hump and really do what really matters for your business. Rather than getting stuck with the development phase, you can really look into how this data is being used by your business. What are the things that you can bring to bear from a predictive analytics perspective, from a trend analysis perspective? How can you really take this data that you are working on as a data engineer, but really giving them an opportunity to go beyond their scope of the role and peek out and see, okay, now that I've landed this data, I did all this massaging and applied all the transformations. Let me see how it is being used in the real world. So that's where I missed for most of my career. I was just heads down, drag, drop, do all the ETL work that I had to do the grunt work, but I really missed the overarching, okay, how is it being used? How is my data influencing the business decisions is something that I did not pay attention to until later. But now I would really encourage data engineers to take advantage of tools at your hand, like AI infused at every layer within Fabric, and really enhance your own learning experience on how your business is working, how your work is being used for the broader strategic decisions across your business. So I think that's definitely something I would take away, talk to my younger self.
Yeah, cool. So what are the key takeaways from today's podcast?
So a couple of things that I would love for viewers to take a look at is, we did a mechanics video where you really get the power of what OneLake and Data Factory experiences sort of bring to bear. We have really cool features across Fabric like shortcuts, mirroring. We are doing a ton of work in mirroring, and it's a really a game changer where you're meeting the customer where we are. I know many products, many companies try to use this in context and probably loosely sometimes where you really meet customers where they are in their data journey, but differentiating features like shortcuts or mirroring in this case really attest to that mantra of meeting customers in their journey. And I would really encourage folks to take a look at this. I know it's going to pop up on the screen. Take a look at this mechanics video to get the real detail about what are the different ways of ingesting data into OneLake within Fabric, and how do you take advantage of all the different workloads, AI engines that speak its own language. If you're using Spark, you can interact with Spark within the same data sitting in your OneLake. If you are a T-SQL developer, how SQL engine talks to the same data sitting in OneLake, KQL, the same case. So there are different purpose-built engines that talk to the same data, taking away the silos and duplication. So that one mechanics video really gives you all the information, and it's pretty cool to watch how all these things come together. So that's one thing. And I would also encourage viewers to look at a thought leadership blog. If you haven't heard about mirroring, you definitely are missing something big. So check out the blog that popped up on the screen to see what is mirroring, why it matters, what is in it for you as a customer or a partner, and how you can take advantage of all the cool capabilities that our Data Factory team is hard at work at.
Yeah, these are some awesome resources. We'll be sure to make sure everything's linked in the description as well, so it's super easy to find for you guys. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Swetha. This was an amazing session. I learned a lot, and I hope the viewers did too.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
A huge thanks to Cathrine and Swetha for joining our podcast today and talking about Fabric for ADF customers and how you can get started in Fabric today.
Before we wrap up, we'd love to hear from you. Please share your feedback or let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes by commenting below. If you're interested in joining us as a guest, please reach out to either Connie or me. Our contact details are linked in the description. Don't forget to follow the Data Factory team on social media so you never miss an update on new features and more exciting news. See y'all next time for the next episode.